Okay, yesterday we just finished the Modim, offering our acknowledgments of thanks, and we articulated many reasons why we have to be thankful. And as a result of that, we're beholding the God for all that He continuously provides. When we, in our minds, visualize a king, what does a king represent? Compassion or justice? Usually a king, the persona of a king is sternness, not flexible and gentle and kind. But God, as the ultimate king, as we say on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, in the liturgy of the service, we say, who is Hashem? Mamlich malachim v'lo hamlucha. He coronates kings, but He is the king. He's the King of kings. He's Melech Malchi Amlochim. He's the King of the kings. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Blessed One, the Holy One. And this King, who's the King of kings, who's the Creator, who wills every aspect of our existence, after saying the Modim, what we're thankful for, Hatov ki lo cholo rachmecha. The mercy of God is never exhausted. It's never depleted. And it's ongoing. And therefore, there are miracles continuously. There are wonders continuously. And God provides in the most exceptional way on every level to maintain our balance and to guarantee our successes in the objective of life. It's amazing. We're in wonderment if you appreciate it. Therefore, what follows? Al kulam yisbarach b'yishram shimcha malkeinu. For all this, al kulam, for all this that we've articulated and delineated and expressed, yisbarach b'yishramam shimcha malkeinu. It should be blessed and exalted. Your name, our King. Yisbarach, blessed. Meaning we recognize that you're the source of blessing. All this is a confirmation that you're an unending source of blessing for all that what we said you are. V'yisramam shimcha, and your name will be exalted. Exalted means much more than elevated. You can elevate something, but exalted has another connotation. You know, the Talmud tells us that a location does not honor a person, but the person honors his location. Where's this derived from? Where's this drawn from? We find that when God descended on Sinai, at the time God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, the mountain, that piece of rock took on a special value. Nobody was permitted even to approach the rock, to touch the rock. What happens when God ascended and removed himself from the location? They were able to approach the rock because it was an ordinary rock. But if it's the location which gives it special value, even after God departed, you should be able to you shouldn't touch the rock. The answer is, it's not the rock. It's not the location, but it's who's in that location. So it's not the location which honors the person, which gives honor to the person, but rather it's the person that gives value to the location. I'll give you an example. You have this person, he has 100 IQ, and he happens to have the same name like Warren Buffett. And he has a locker in the gym, and on his locker it says Warren Buffett. So the club that sells membership, they said, one of the members of that club, his name's Warren Buffett, and they show the picture of the name plaque on the locker. Everybody wants to join that club. And they go and they sell out the membership. They arrive at the club. They see this guy. The man doesn't even know how to open the locker with the combination. He has to call an attendant to help open the locker. And the man is about 60 years younger than Warren Buffett. He said, "Are you Warren Buffett?" He says, "Yeah, I'm Warren Buffett." He barely could articulate the name properly, but he's Warren Buffett. You understand? You sound like the guy, but you're not the guy. It's not the name that gives you value. It's the person who carries that name. He gives the name value. Now, why is God seen as so special? Of course, he's the creator. He wills existence. But in what context does he will our existence? We just articulated in the modim. Firstly, you, the creator, took us, which are less than infinitesimal, as your people, forever. The relation cannot be determined or abrogated. The goodness, the kindness, the miracles, the wonders, unceasing. Your mercy never to be exhausted. You protect our salvation. It's unheard of. The creator should be so dedicated to our existence and our eternity. It's not to be believed, but it's reality. It is a reality. Therefore, because of all this, your name should be blessed and exalted, meaning we see you at a level of exaltation that there's nothing comparable to it. Shimcha Malkeinu, your name, our king. Although king connotes control, dominion, this kind of king, who wouldn't want this kind of king? But this king could be tough also. He could play tough love. God forbid, we'd be reading at the end of the book of Vayikra, if you follow my statutes, the blessing is unending. It's overwhelming. But if God forbid, if you should cross that line and misbehave, I will do whatever I can to rein in on you. As painful as that may be, to get you back on track. And that's only due to the love that I have for you, that I will not abandon you. Shimcha Malkeinu Tamid. In every context, God is seen in the most exalted level. Lo Olam Va'ed, forever. We'll always see you in that special, through that special lens, which we spoke about the modim. The Chofetz Chaim writes that, sometimes you have to put things in perspective to be able to deal with things. We see things in life that when we hear about it, it grates on our ears. It actually impacts on our emotion, and we're irked by it to the point we really want to bolt and flee and run. The Holocaust, the level of barbarism, the demonic behavior, what they did. We're supposed to be God's people, chosen people. How does God allow such a thing to take place? How? It's not easy to process and to accept it and embrace it and still remain devout and believing and not to question. Nobody's saying it's not a challenge. It's a challenge. Of course, the greater a person is, the less of a challenge it is. I told over the story, the Klosenberger Rebbe, Zecher Tzaddik Levrocha, there was a town in Romania, it was called Klosenberg. And he was the Torah giant in Europe pre-World War II. And the majority of his community were annihilated, murdered by the Nazis. He lost a wife and 11 children, were killed by the Nazis. And he was in Auschwitz. And because he was a rabbi, those are the ones, the Nazis, they chose to really torture. And what they did to make a mockery of him and take advantage of him, and you realize the people in the camps were malnourished. They didn't feed him a sufficient amount of calories or protein, forget about protein, malnourished. And they took a 50-pound sack of salt and they wet it, that it should really be heavier, and they put it on his back, and they had him walk up and down a hill all day long, carrying this 50-pound sack of salt. But I'll give you the background. How do we know this? The holy rabbi, never shared with anyone. In the early 70s, when the Iron Curtain fell and they were released and they were permitted to come to America, the Glasnost. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha, who was a leading Torah sage, he came from Russia. He was a rabbi in Russia, and he spoke Russian. So he was at the airport when these Russians came off the plane, or maybe he was in the receiving room, because he was an older man even then already. He was a man in his 80s at the time, and they saw he was a holy rabbi, and they were amazed. He spoke fluent Russian. And he says to one of these people, or then a man in his maybe upper 60s, he says, when at the time of the Russian Revolution, what do you remember about Judaism? Because he already was born then. What do you remember? Did you study anything? Do you know Shema Yisrael? No recollection of Shema Yisrael. Do you know Modani? When you wake up in the morning, you thank God that He returned your soul? No. He says, one thing I do remember, a verse. And what's the verse? That the verse was the verse in the Tochacha in Dvarim, Kisavo, Al Ashelo Abarat Hashem Elokecha B'Simcha U'B'Tuv Kol. You did not serve God with joy and with good heartedness, Tuv Levo, with a good heart, Tuv Levo. That's the verse he remembers, and he said it. Even people who are learned don't know that verse. And you're not even aware of the Shema or Modani. How do you know the verse? How do you know that? He says, I'll tell you the story. I was in a concentration camp during World War II. I was together with the Klosenberger rabbi before I was with this Jew. And the Nazis put a 50-pound sack of wet salt on his back, and they had him go up and hill all that day long to torture him. And as he went up the hill, which was the effort, he would groan, and it says, the reason why this is happening to us is because we did not serve God with joy and good heartiness. We served him begrudgingly. The man lost a wife, 11 children, a community of thousands of Hasidim, murdered. And the man is putting into perspective the reason why he's experiencing even this torture at this moment is because he did not serve God with joy and good heartedness, but begrudgingly. What are we talking about over here? This is like not to be believed. The man is being pounded into the ground. And the man has this level of understanding of why things happened. Let's say you know your father loves you more than anything in the world. And he goes and he starts pummeling you, which seems to be, there's only one or two ways to understand it. Either he lost his mind, because why is he pummeling me and hurting me the way he's hurting me? Or he, because of my understanding of his love for me, although I don't understand it, there must be a reason which I don't understand. Because my father is acting fully, functionally, he's functioning fully, and yet his behavior seems to be something not to be understood. But because his understanding of love that his father asked him, he doesn't question it. Someday he'll find out why. If God loves the Jewish people, as we say, in the Modim, and all of a sudden there's a left turn here, a curveball, not to be understood. The pain is all consuming. How do we get it? How do you process it? For all that you've done and all that you do, that we articulate in the Modim, your name will be blessed and exalted Our king, the king sometimes has to rein in on the subjects, that they should be appropriate subjects for themselves. Forever, Tamid, you'll be praised and exalted continuously forever because of who you are. We may not understand, but someday we will understand. To put it at a level of clarity, why things have to happen the way they happened. Give you an example. If the United States would have won the war, God forbid, this world would be disastrous. What the Nazis would have done to humanity, they would have purged humanity of anybody they thought wasn't fit or worthy to live. That's what they would have done. So to free Europe of the Nazi grip, there was D-Day. Millions of troops left those landing ships to attack Europe. Do you know how many soldiers were mowed down and killed to succeed? They were so entrenched, the Nazis. But you know what the answer is? There were tens of thousands of people killed within the first 10 minutes when they stormed the beaches. But you know what? For the sake of freedom for the world, it was worth all those casualties. Doesn't make sense. But if you appreciate freedom and you understand what it means to break the grip of the Nazis, who are the most demonic race, it's worth it. Tens of thousands. And although people lost their only children, or a number of children, when they stormed those beaches, it's worth it to gain freedom for the world. So God himself was the creator, and he takes 6 million Jews, 1 million children, and he openly says, I love them more than anything, more than they love their own families. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because we don't understand. Is it less than storming the beaches to free the world of the grip of these murderers, of these demons, these monsters? Therefore, I will praise you in the most exalted manner, our King, continuously, forever, because that's the reality of who you are. But we don't understand. You don't have to understand. God has proven himself, who we are, and what his relationship is. So just because we don't understand doesn't mean, we're not saying it's not painful. Person has to undergo a surgery to excise a tumor. The recovery period is painful beyond an imagination. You have to take painkillers. Even with the painkillers, it's painful. And the physical therapy until you regain your function. But knowing ultimately that what I'm experiencing now is all part of recovery, the person says, I'm happy to endure it. Because ultimately it's for the best. It's only for my good. And that's the statement. After we say the modim, we say forever, for all that you've done and you do, you will be blessed and exalted. Our King, the King connotes dominion, was subject to his will continuously forever. So the Al Kulam is quantifying and setting it in place because of the track record of who you are, no matter what happens. We embrace it. We always see it in an exalted context, always, for that reason. No, it's a fact that the majority of people survived the Holocaust because of the literally inhuman treatment that the Jews were treated, even the ones who were not killed, but they died on their own because a person went into the Holocaust when he was in his 30s and it was subject to that level of physical abuse with malnourishment, you couldn't survive. You couldn't live. You just totally faded out and died because you couldn't keep up that workload. A person when he was 14, 15, he's young enough that if God allowed it, even within the context of reality, he was able to survive as long as he wasn't killed. and he didn't contract any disease in the camps. He was able to survive. And the majority of survivors went in when they were 14, 13, 14, 15. If they went in, if they were over 20, in the mid-20s, they didn't have the stamina to be able to survive it. Now, a young child who barely experiences life, he has no understanding of what life is, 14-year-old child, 13-year-old child, he believes he was born and raised in the cocoon of his parents. Their love, their protection, what they provided. All of a sudden, he's thrown into a what? And the child believes life will continue this way. But as you mature and you realize life is far from perfect. There's disappointments, there's pain, there's suffering, there's successes, there's failures, there's setbacks. But that's part of maturing. That's part of the maturation process of a human being maturing physically, emotionally, and mentally. These children never went through that maturation process. So all of a sudden, at the very beginning, where they see life is supposed to be a bowl of cherries, supposed to be angelic life, they see it worse than hell. Horrors and things that we wouldn't want to ever see in our lives. So what do you expect these people? They should survive spiritually. What should their faith be after the war? Shattered, destroyed. They said, how could there be a God? My father, my mother, my siblings, my grandparents, my community, everything destroyed. How does God allow this? Therefore, many people have many casualties, spiritual casualties. But if these people had somebody take them under their wing, and the Kloisenberger Rebbe was one of those people, he took hundreds and hundreds of young teenagers who were 17, 18 in the camp, and he spoke to them in the camp and post-camp, in the DP camps. And he brought thousands of young people back to the beliefs that families that what they believed before the war. But without his coaxing and love and warmth and being a role model for them, they wouldn't have survived. Spiritually, they wouldn't have survived. They would have abandoned their Judaism, their faith. We always say, Al Kulam, for all that you are, we said in the Modim, Yisbarach V'Yisromam Shimcha Malkeinu. Your name shall be blessed, Yisbarach in the future, exalted. The name of our King continuously, regardless of what, of the predicament. Lolam Ved. So this is what I want to tell you, the name of the Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim believed that we were holding in the Messianic times pre-Mashiach. Why? Because the Gemara tells us that certain things don't make any sense. The nations, they behave in a way, they do idolatry, they do adultery, they do bestiality, do many things. And God lets them to get away with us. And we, as chosen people, God continuously, we get out of line, he comes down hard on us. Does that make any sense? So the Gemara, the Talmud quotes a pasuk in Habakkuk that it says when God punishes us, it's like a rooster in the barnyard. What does it mean, like a rooster in the barnyard? And it's interesting, there's a Hebrew word pick. A rooster, when it eats in the barnyard, it pecks away. It goes through the barnyard, picks up the little kernels of wheat that fall in, which is the feed that's in the barnyard. It pecks away. So the Talmud says, what is it analogous to? There's a king. And he's a king, magnanimous, giving, and he says to his subjects, you're all welcome to borrow a certain amount of money, which was something substantial. And the due date to pay back is whenever you can pay back. Now his most intimate friend comes to him, who loved the king and the king loves him. He offers him the same loan, but he says to him, with you, it's not no open due date. The date is you have to pay every month. I want you to pay monthly payment. So ultimately, when it comes to the end of the time where everybody has paid back, you're going to be paid up. Every month you have to pay part of that debt. So the person says to the king, that means I have to be preoccupied to make sure I have enough money to meet that payment every month. He says, I'm close to you, love me. And yet you put this burden, this hardship on me. He says, you don't understand. Those other people, if they don't pay the debt when it's due, they're going into the oblivion. That's going to be the degree of punishment. And they don't realize if they don't chip away at that debt over the years, it's impossible to pay that debt. And therefore, they're going into the oblivion. You people, because I love you, as difficult it is to pay every month, to be preoccupied with it, you will pay every month. And by paying the debt every month, ultimately when it's due, which is when Mashiach is meant to come, you're debt-free. Therefore, I'm doing you a favor. Therefore, it's like the rooster in the barnyard, he pecks away at the granules of grain, and that's the way he supports himself. So the Chofetz Chaim writes, you ever hear they used to have a ceremony, it's called burning of the mortgage. We paid off, and now there's an amount left, it's something semi-substantial. And they make a last-ditch effort to raise the money, and we're going to burn the mortgage. When God turns the screws on us really bad and puts it in that vice, and we feel like our life is being squeezed out of us, you know something? That's the last payment. That's the consolation. And because it's the last payment, that means Mashiach is right around the corner, and ultimately all evil will be expunged from existence, and God's glory will shine forth. That's Al Kulam. For all that we've seen and what you've done and what you do, your name will be always blessed and exalted. Our King continuously forever, because we understand exactly what the nature of that relationship is.